Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the District of Brown Deer School Board meeting for September 14th, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. Verification of public notice. It's been publicly noticed. Verification of a quorum. We have 6 board members in person and 1 board member virtually. Approval of the agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Dr. Beadle, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Ashley, a motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Dr. Beadle, I'll second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor with raised hand and or aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Motion carries unanimously 7-0. And to our mission statement, together with our families and community, we will inspire students to be passionate learners, creative thinkers, and innovative leaders who enrich our world. All right, let's go on to item number 2, our business office and facilities update. So let's go on to A, buildings and grounds. Ms. Meitzke.
Good evening, Board of Education. Well, Dr. Brown really created a great process for us to keep you apprised of everything that we're working on, but that doesn't necessarily cascade out to the community all the time. So what I have done in my memo is essentially taken my updates to you and put them in chronological order, and that way everybody is getting the same message. So a few things that I would just like to point out that we have been working on over the past month, and it has been a very busy month for us, is we did a lot of our security and fire testing throughout the district. So that includes our fire alarms as well as our sprinkler systems. We also had new furniture provided to the middle school guidance counselor. She's new to us. That was a position we didn't have previously, so we needed to make sure that we did have furniture for her. We also removed a couple of boilers from the boiler pumps from the lower level boiler room at the middle high school and took them in to be rebuilt. We have also done the installation of gate arms at the elementary school. And while there are a few bugs that we need to work out in that system, they seem to be working very well to help with the flow of traffic. Not only that, but my team finished up summer cleaning, and we have been helping the teachers with any requests that they have as far as adding furniture into their spaces or removing furniture out of them. So overall, it has been an incredibly busy month, but I am very proud of the outcome and the effort that my team has put in. They did a phenomenal job over the summer and rose to the occasion as they always do. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Board members, any questions for Ms. Meitzke? Okay, I have one question, Jody. How are our fields and everything holding up so far with our football and soccer and everything? How are we holding up so far?
So the football field looks amazing. Our current ground staff has done a knockout job. We have now started painting the falcon back on the middle of the field. It looks beautiful. So overall, even with the dry spell, our irrigation systems did help. Grass is going to turn brown during those spells of heat and dryness. And thankfully now we're on the other end of that, but they have been doing very well.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other further questions? All right, thank you so much, Jody. All right, let's go on to item B, our business office update. Mr. Klimek.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. I did provide a brief update in the board book today. A couple items just to talk about briefly. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I did want to comment on student transportation because I know that is an issue top of mind all across the country, frankly, but it's been a bit of a rocky start. So far, we are working through it with Right Way. We've had a couple of mornings where we were down a driver, and so we did miss, or some of the routes were a little bit late. we've gone 2 days this week where it's been everything's been on time as far as I know, and so we haven't had issues. I'm in contact with Right Way every morning just to kind of get a sense of what's happening with the routes to ensure that in case they're a driver calls in sick. They don't have a lot of backup at this point. They are completing some training, so they do hope to have that that pool of drivers expand a little bit over the next several weeks. We are continuing to work with them to get the Here Comes the Bus app implemented. And so as soon as we do, we'll be letting parents know that that is ready to go. And then the biggest piece, which has been shared, I think, with the board as well as through Mr. McGregory, is just that there does continue to be a challenge with after school events. And this is, again, not specific to Right Way. This is all bus companies all over Southeast Wisconsin, where they are struggling with drivers during certain periods of time. So I know the athletic department has been working diligently in trying to reschedule events when possible to push them back a little later into the evening. We're hopeful again that with these additional bus drivers that will allow us to get a few more buses available in those late afternoon hours. We're obviously aware, some sports like football, which are played under the lights at most schools, we can work around that. But when we start getting into later in October, November, where it starts to get darker on fields like soccer, we need to obviously make sure that the kids can play before it gets dark. So we're going to be working through that as best as possible. And we are continuing as a district to look at some alternative methods of transportation as needed, whether it's including renting vans or encouraging some parent transfer of transportation of students and athletes to those events. So we're working on that as well.
Question.
Yeah.
In relationship to this transportation, what about are we using those buses that we bought, the buses / vans that we bought a couple of years ago? Are we also utilizing those for the transportation for the extracurricular activities?
For certain events, cross country, I believe, has used it. I mean, it's for those smaller events where it's a handful of students, but we have used them. When you get into situations with like the soccer team, that's more than one van. So, it's coordinating that. They still have been trying to use buses when possible. So we do use them when it's available. And that's why one of the options we do have is perhaps even if Right Way can't guarantee us a bus during a certain period, if we have to rent a van and have a coach or someone else drive that, that's another possibility for us to look at. So we are utilizing the 2 vans that we have. But again, some sporting events and teams are just too large to utilize those, but other ones that we do.
Okay. Well, Kevin, question for you. Would it be, I don't know, from a cost perspective, would it be advantageous for us to potentially buy our own yellow school bus that we would just have that would be here on grounds? And if we needed to use it for extracurricular activities and things of that nature, would that be more cost effective as well as better for us because we wouldn't have to worry about it as much? Would that be something that you think that could be potential?
Well, it's something that district had many years ago, but I think the cost of upkeep and having people being able to drive it on staff was a challenge. And eventually when it became unserviceable, they just took it out of commission and that was the end of it. And we did. I mean, this is certainly a unique period of time right now. So I don't know how long it's going to last, if we're going to continue to have this struggle with having drivers or whether we've hit the bottom and we're turning the corner now. And as more people are going back to work, maybe we'll have it'll be a little easier to get it. We have also talked to Right Way because the buses aren't the problem, it's the drivers. So if we had individuals on staff or if we have coaches that have gone through the training to get their CDL license with the bus endorsement, Right Way would be more than happy to employ those people as bus drivers, drop off a bus, and then our folks could drive the buses to and from events. But again, there's training involved with that. There's time and people have to be willing to make that investment, which we've talked about as well as a potential solution. I think, again, it depends on how long we think this is going to last and how much of an inconvenience it will be long term. So that's a pretty serious investment, I think, to talk about purchasing a bus and then having the staff around to do that. And then it still only solves, it's one team you've solved the problem for, but it doesn't help necessarily with the other events that are going on simultaneously. So certainly something we can look at, but I think in the short term, we're just trying to make sure we have other opportunities to get some of our smaller teams to and from events as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions for Kevin in relationship to transportation?
I have a question.
Mhm.
The vans that we do have, are they, what's the capacity for that? And do they have seat belts?
They're 9-passenger, I believe they're 9-passenger vans. So I haven't actually ridden in one, but I believe they all have, it'd be a normal passenger van seat with seat belts, unlike a school bus would, so.
Okay, and then you mentioned something about you'd look at parents would transport students. Is that?
There is a potential in that. I mean, there are some districts in our conference that have basically outsourced all transportation in this time to parents.
Okay.
I don't think we're in the situation to be able to do that, but if that alleviates some of the pressure, if we can take some kids in a van and some parents, again, it depends on the sport. But when we're looking at things like maybe over the winter swimming or wrestling or things like that, where there's little smaller groups of kids involved, maybe it's something that we could do it, and then it would prevent us from having to rent additional vans or still rely on the bus as much as possible. So it's certainly something we would look at. And again, I think Mr. McGregory is always in contact with coaches, and then the coaches are in contact with families, so that if that is an opportunity, we would certainly explore it.
Thank you.
Okay, and again, if I would encourage anyone, if you do hear of things transportation related, we are working through the issues as they go, but feel free to reach out to me and let me know, because I'm obviously not in front of the schools every morning and every afternoon making sure that the buses are here and that, but I do hear from right away when I know there are problems, and I want to make sure that if there are other issues that crop up, I'd like to know. So then the next item I have on the update is just a short update on our Medicaid reimbursement project that we were working on. And I did update this earlier today. So if you did look at it over the weekend, there is a little more verbiage in the version that's posted now on BoardBook. But basically, Dara and I have met with a couple different vendors, and we've come to decide on working with a company called Go Solutions, which is the parent company of the software that we use to manage our special education students and staff, so called Oasis. So we'll be going with them to help us through our Medicaid reimbursement. And one of the things that I'm our Medicaid reimbursement. One of the things that I'm learning are that there are a variety of different types of Medicaid reimbursement. Now we've been getting, we did receive about $80,000 from Medicaid this past year, but that was under what's known as Medicaid Administrative Claiming, or MAC, which is really nothing that the district has to do. It's based on previous year claims, and it's basically an opportunity to recoup some of the overhead costs. So in kind of working with our auditors, we were kind of aware of the differences here. And so I looked back and I saw that we really haven't done any school-based service claims, which are the ones that you're actually looking at staff members working with students to provide specific activities. So we haven't really done any claiming for that. And that was something I heard from our predecessor, that we haven't really taken advantage of Medicaid as probably as good as we could and claim as much revenue as we could. So my original version of the memo was kind of talking about the cost and related to $80,000. That MAC reimbursement portion of Medicaid is something that would happen, and there's no cost for us. That's something that's going to happen in the background anyway. So really, when we're talking about some additional expenses, it's talking about adding the ability of doing those school-based service claiming. So we are looking at that every single claim we're able to make will be increased revenue for the district, and that's another advantage of this company. So in using a company like this, we're going to be, and I kind of summarized in the last paragraph, it's really to make sure that we're in compliance with all of the Medicaid regulations, making sure our staff is certified, everything is done correctly, so that if we're ever audited by the federal government, we have all the records and everything is ready to go. We will be able to do that school-based services claiming, so we'll see an increase in our revenue there. And then they will be able to also look at us and support us in trying to identify if there's any other Medicaid revenue that may be available through services that we may not be currently offering. So we expect this to be a win-win. It's a very small price to pay for the additional support. And so we're going to move forward with that over the next several weeks. And so hopefully by the end of next year, we'll see an increase in our Medicaid claiming. Any questions on that? Okay, then, if not, we'll move on to the last item in the memo, which flows into the next item on the agenda, which is my request for the approval of the resolution to approve and authorize temporary borrowing. And I give you a brief history of it in the memo, just kind of explaining the fact that with the way that school districts' finances are or how the revenue and expense streams are. We're now we're approaching our low point of the year where we don't get tax revenue until January. We'll get a little bit of state revenue in October, but for the most part, we're going to be spending more than we're taking in from now until the end of the year. And so most school districts do require some sort of short-term borrowing to bridge that gap, to make sure you're making payroll and everything like that. So, so over the years, and Lisa will remember this, when we started on the board, we were borrowing over $4 million a year. And then all of the years that we've been able to increase our fund balance, that's provided us with more money, so that required less, more money to tap into during that portion of the year, which allows us the ability to borrow less. So we've slowly decreased. We were at $2.3 million last year. So here's the scarier part for me was that as a new business manager and new to paying attention to this level of detail in the district, our financial advisor, PMA, did come through, looked at my budget, looked at our annual report to date from the auditors of how our previous fiscal year ended. And they are actually predicting that we may not need to borrow at all. Now the thing is May. So because I would like to sleep at night for the next 4 months or so. And because they've also switched. They used to do, in previous years, PMA was issuing tax-free bonds. So they were government bonds, and because they were tax-free, there were more restrictions on those bonds and how much a district could borrow based on their needs. So you had to fall within a very narrow window. This year, PMA feels like, I think because of some of the uncertainty with maybe some of the districts, and again, this is a program that there are, I believe, 16 districts that are participating in. So we're just one of them, where we're all pooling our assets together basically, and they're issuing these notes in a lump sum. We are able to borrow really whatever we feel we need to. And so in discussions with them to provide us with some pad, we've decided to seek a borrow of $1 million. So again, we may not use any of it, but again, as a safety measure, and because of the fact too, with cash flow, it's really going to be important that we are claiming our federal money as quickly as we can. Some of our ESSER dollars, while we'll be getting the ESSER dollars, a lot of it's going to be tied to salary. So that's something I'm only going to be able to claim, on a quarterly basis. So it's not like I can do a lump sum and get a ton of money up front. So we feel like this is an appropriate amount to give us some pads, so that we should be able to, or we will be able to make it through our low point until our December or January main tax payment will come through from the village. So that's the reason we do this. And the costs are relatively small. The estimate, and it may come in a little under this, is 70 basis points, or about $7,000 to borrow the $1 million for a year. Are there any questions about the short-term borrowing process or this particular borrow in particular?
Kevin, quick question. If we've got the $1 million, is it almost kind of like we just have it sitting there? And if we don't use it, then we don't have to pay back the $7,000, or it's the $7,000 regardless whether we use it or not?
It is a $7,000 regardless of whether we use it or not. I will just say that if everything goes as we're predicting, I think next year I would strongly look at a line of credit. The issue came down to the timing of me completing the budget, and then almost right away, PMA was looking at the budget for cash flow purposes. And so I didn't have time. I did reach out to BMO, which is one of our main financial institutions, to see how quickly they could come up with an idea, so I would know what it would cost to do the line of credit piece, because there are charges to set that up. Obviously, you only pay interest when you borrow money, and then you can pay it back as soon as you want to. I think it's something I would look at strongly next year. In order to participate in the PMA program, I just didn't have a lot of time to do that. And so I figured, well, it's a small amount of money. It's not a huge expense at this point. And they did the cash flow analysis. So I feel comfortable working with them in that respect. But next year, with more lead time over the summer, I would certainly start looking at other options, especially if we would have another year where we'd add to fund balance, and we would expect that cash flow, and especially as we look at our cash flow, if we never drop below $1 million in our bank account, then we know we certainly could make it through the year without borrowing. So then the line of credit would make more sense, I think.
All right, so the $7,000, are we going to pull the $7,000 is going to come out of Fund 10?
Yeah, it's an interest expense, last year, I think last year with 2.3 million, I think we paid almost $20,000 in costs to that. Because of the nature of this, because we are a government entity issuing these notes, there's bond counsel, there's all these other layers of legal review and financial assistance that's required to the sale of the bonds, and then all of the maintenance involved in making sure the interest payments are made to the borrowers and things like that. So that's really the cost plus the interest piece. So if the interest comes in below what they're predicting, then it might actually be lower than that. They're kind of looking at that as like a worst case scenario.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Kevin? Go ahead, Ms. Peterson.
Hi, Kevin. Kevin, you and I met and talked about this, and we're both in agreement that this was a good move on the school's part. One thing I didn't and as I'm continuing to learn here, one thing that I failed to ask when we did meet was, can you talk about the payback of this and how that actually works? When would these funds actually be due from the school?
Right. There's a statute that prevents districts from having two of these kind of short-term borrows simultaneously. So we have to pay back our $2.3 million one, and I believe the deadline is around November 1st. So basically what PMA will be doing is they're going to go out and sell, they'll market the bonds over the next several weeks. We'll get a commitment to a particular price. There'll be a day where we will take $2.3 million out of our bank account, and they will pay off our previous loan. And then, within a day or two, we'll get $1 million dropped back in, which will be the proceeds from the sale. And then we hold on to them we'll be holding on to them for a year. Other districts are borrowing in some pockets, just to make sure you can pay it off whenever you want to and borrow it for a short term. But I thought, again, at this price, I wasn't going to try to work too tight of a schedule. I thought we'll just have the $1 million for the year, and having gone, once I go through that budget cycle I'll feel much more comfortable knowing what our fund balance is and how it actually how our cash will actually run. So I'll be able to feel more comfortable next year.
Great. Thank you, Kevin.
Any other questions for Kevin?
I do have a question just for clarity's sake and putting the pieces all together. So are we not able to maybe pay back 1.3 and then keep $1 million of what we already have? Or does it have to be a whole new transaction?
It is a whole new transaction because of the way the statutes work. If we did a line of credit, then it would be a separate situation. We might be able to have that line open for multiple years and only borrow in pockets and keep it open, much like a home equity line of credit would be for people with their homes. But the way these are set up, these have specific interest rates being paid to borrowers. There's a redemption period where we pay them back with interest, and then they get their money, and then we'll be issuing bonds to potentially other people to get the $1 million. So these are coming from different sources, really.
Okay.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Yeah, I just have one other question, and that has to do with, so the 1 million that we're borrowing, that will come due, or when we pay that back, when?
A year from now, October of 2022.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And if anybody wants to see the entire offering document, I didn't include it because it's like 50 pages long. It does include all of the other districts that are involved. Glendale River Hills is one of them as a neighbor, but they're all over the state that are participating in this program that PMA runs. And so it's something that we've done for several years working with them. So that it's safe. It's been a good program, I think, to have, and it's been competitive in interest rates. So again, with the amount we're borrowing and the amount of cost, it felt like a no-brainer to pursue that, just to have some safety.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Kevin? All right, would someone like to make a motion, or we'd have to go into our roll call vote?
So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in the amount of not to exceed $1 million, issuance of taxable tax and revenue anticipation promissory notes, and participation in the PMA levy and aid anticipation notes program as presented this evening.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Ashley. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Yep. Our second?
Yes, I'll second Dr. Peters.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion's been made and seconded.
Was that
All right.
Nicole? I just want to, was that Nicole that seconded? Okay.
That was
Yes.
Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Okay,
No.
do we need to make this as a roll call vote?
Yes, we need to do it as a roll call vote, please.
Okay. I think you're muted, Dorothea.
All right, Beto.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't try to do the alphabetical by memory. Daniels Ashley,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Robinson, aye. Smith, Zick,
Aye.
and Zelinski.
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously 7-0.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's go on to our next item, item number 3, engaged learners. And item A is first weeks of school. Dr. Kelsey Brown.
Good evening, board members. We are happy to be back in-person learning, maximizing our classrooms, and our staff and students are happy to be back in our buildings. Things are going well, as we know, with the first few weeks of school. There are always some things that need to be ironed out, and that just comes with the process of learning and understanding where we need to pivot and make adjustments as we continue to move forward. So again, we're happy to have everyone back in the buildings, and I want to say thank you to board members who came out to celebrate with us on the first day of school to receive our students back into our buildings at the middle high school. And on the playground at the elementary school, it was great weather that day and a great day to see all of our smiling faces behind the facial coverings come back on the first day of school. We are, Mr. Garrison and I continue to meet with building principals to support them in their efforts to continue to plan as we ensure a high quality teaching and learning experience for our students. I do want us all to be mindful of the fact that when our schools were shut down, March 13th, 2020, we have, I'll just use our 6th graders as an example. Some of our 6th graders have not seen a school building since 4th grade. So we know and understand we are getting students reacclimated to being back in buildings. That's some of our returning students. That's our returning students, as well as students who are new to the school district of Brown Deer, as we continue to teach them the Brown Deer way. We continue to focus on our SEL work under the leadership of Mrs. Antandari and her SEL team. So that plan has been laid out. As Kevin mentioned earlier, we did have a few glitches in busing on the first day with anywhere from students not knowing their bus numbers. Students were dropped off in the morning, they got picked up in the afternoon, wasn't sure about the bus number. So the principals were great with that in securing the list for the students with their bus routes and their bus numbers to make sure they were able to get on the appropriate bus. We did get our exercise on that first day of school with getting kids to where they needed to be. We continue to implement our COVID mitigation protocols to the greatest extent possible. Again, our goal is to keep everyone safe and healthy in the midst of this experience. We are also continuing to plan around, you'll hear from Mr. Garrison very shortly, as it relates to the extension of the distance learning process for our students here in the school district of Brown Deer in the event that virtual learning is necessary for our students. We also continue with the KILL partnership, where we have about 12 families who are a part of that experience. So things are going well for the first couple weeks, and we will continue to move forward with doing our very best to keep our students in-person learning maximize our efforts with the KEEL experience, recognizing that the inevitable at this point, as we have just learned in the last few weeks, is quarantines and quarantining and isolating students and staff is still a part of what we're experiencing this year. I will also share our experience this year is slightly different from previous school district, because if you recall, last year we started out virtual for the first 3 weeks, and then we slowly phased our kids back in. So our real true 100% for the most part in-person learning is this year in the midst of this COVID experience. So things are going well. Our principals and assistant principals are working very hard. Our teachers are working hard at putting those seating charts, implementing seating charts in their classrooms so that we can continue to contact trace in the manner in which we need to do that under Ms. Farrington's leadership, our school district nurse. So things are happening around here. We continue to move forward again with in-person learning here in the district. And if there are any questions I can answer regarding the first weeks of school, please feel free to ask.
Any questions for Dr. Kelsey Brown?
Yes, I have a question. I don't know.
Whoa, I'm sorry. Who is this?
I'm in the corner right there. Give me 1 second. Let me turn this thing on.
No, actually, this is only for board members only. I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
Board members only, board members only to be able to ask questions. I'm sorry. This is not open meeting for residents to be able to ask questions. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Beadle. And may I also add technology? Just want to give a quick shout out to Mr. Garrison and Ms. Turner with the technology team, as Chromebook distribution has also started this week. And that's also a massive undertaking in making sure all of our students and families have Chromebooks in the event that we need to return to a virtual experience.
Okay. All right. Board members, any questions for Dr. Kelsey Brown?
I have a quick question. I know that just as far as food service, they were making such big changes for this year. Have those gone smoothly? They reported earlier in the summer just some changes that they were doing. I was just wondering about how food service is going with lunch.
I think they're obviously getting used to having as many kids in the building as we have had this year. So I think there have been a few minor service issues, but they are working on implementing all of the things that we talked about. But I've heard for the most part, it's been going pretty well. I know that I think one day we had an issue where the elementary school ran out of a particular entree, which in the beginning of the year, it's always tough to gauge, which ones the kids are going to gravitate toward. But I'm in contact with Aramark regularly, but I think for the most part, it's been going pretty well.
Did you see them just?
Were you finished with your question? I'm sorry.
That was not me.
Oh, okay. All right. Board members, any other further questions for Dr. Kelsey Brown? All right, thank you very much. All right, Dr. Kelsey Brown, let's go to item B, our 2021-22 enrollment update.
Woo-hoo! Celebration. Just really quickly, wanted to provide the community with an update around enrollment. I'll just give you the overall numbers, and then Mr. Clement will come behind me and share with you how we have to continue. Well, first of all, we got to go for third Friday count, and then our open enrollment out, how that formula works. But generally speaking, total enrolled in the district across all three buildings is 1,688 students. So that is definitely, I would say, since I've been here, that's the highest number of students I've seen in our district in my short tenure here. And so that is definitely a celebration as we continue to move forward. Now, with that being said, I am going to turn it over to Kevin, and he can share with you what comes behind just that overall number, because there are still some pieces that we have to factor in.
Why is there always a but when it be good news? Yes, you did. I'm sorry.
No buts. It's good news. No buts.
Well, no, there is good news. Obviously, when we started the budget process in this experience year, we had no idea what to predict. I did predict flat enrollment, and so we were at I think we we're at 1490 something last year. So the fact that we are approaching 1700, that's a fairly significant increase any given year that we've had. We've been declining enrollment for a few years before that. So this is good news. We do have some decent sized numbers at some of the classes. So we are continuing to look at that. That is the trade-off is you get to the point where you have more kids. And so it has created a few more challenges. I think when we talk about busing, when you talk about food service, we went from last year where half the kids were here all year. And now we are at a point where we have 200 kids, almost 200 more kids than we did the year before. So we're going through that. But the news is good. What it does mean from us from a revenue standpoint, and I can't be exact yet because again, as Dr. Kelsey Brown mentioned, there is a part of the equation where we remove the students that are open enrolling in, and when we add the students that are open enrolling out, and I don't have any sense of the open enroll out, and I won't until October 15th. But right now with these numbers, using our same estimates, we are looking at about $400,000 in increased revenue authority that we did not think we would have. So that's good news. And that's part of that discussion I had about, paring back some of that ESSER funds potentially to do it. Now we may need to add, we'll have to look at staffing in certain areas and make sure that we're not, we don't have a grade level where we're a little pinched and we need to look at that. So we'll continue to examine that. And again, as we mentioned, the third Friday count is this Friday. So that'll be the official number we'll have. And I will share that at the annual meeting, whatever data we have at that point. But again, our budget and the levy is all based on what you approved a month ago. So that's more of an update just to let you know where we're headed. And that will be reflected in October, but wouldn't be reflected next week when we get to the annual meeting. But it is good news. I'm not coming in with any bad news on that one.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, that sounds good. Anybody have any questions for Kevin or Dr. Kelsey Brown in relationship to enrollment? Excellent news. I just think that's just a testament to our district and our teachers and our families being happy with the product that we're providing and our facilities and everything and stuff. So excellent work, team. Excellent work to be able to bring these numbers to we are. So now we just got to wait on third count Friday. All right, let's go on to item number C, our Brown Deer District learning process. Mr. Garrison.
Thank you, members of the board and Dr. Beadle. First of all, I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of our to the team that helped put the information that I'm about to share with you tonight, whether it be from the technology department to our building principals to Kevin Clyman to Dara. The entire school district really leaned in heavily to make sure that we had a plan in place in case we need to go to a distance learning platform. And so as we continue to navigate the pandemic, we must note that many changes that will need to be considered if we move to a distance learning platform. Of course, we know that the pandemic or the experience, as we say, has affected many aspects of our learning experience, but it's also given us the opportunity to be innovative in educating all students. As a school district, we want to maximize our learning around Google Classroom, with the understanding that if we maximize the learning around the Google Classroom with our teachers, that it will directly impact the learning with our students and our families. This year, we will use a similar setup as last year in the event of classroom, school, and or district closure. Our teachers will focus on lesson planning. I want to make sure that that's something that I put out to our entire school community. Lesson planning is our primary structure that will impact learning. We know that with a proper lesson plan in place, you'll be able to execute excellent lessons. I've already stated these conversations in our district meetings this year, that engagement will be a focus both during in-person learning and both in virtual learning as well. And so it's very important to know that we have two different scenarios, actually more than two different scenarios, but in the presentation that I sent out to all staff members and of course to the district and to our families, we have classroom closure procedures, and then we have school and our district closure procedures. In the event that there's a classroom closure, our students who are in quarantine will need to use our Google Classroom. And so what you will hear me say a lot in this presentation is that our Google Classroom will be where we house the learning opportunities for our students asynchronously during a classroom closure. If in the event that we have to do a school and or a district closure, those conversations will look a little different. We will need a 2-day window to make sure that we have everything in place for our students and our families to really maximize our school and or district closure learning time. So please note that we will have materials and instructional technology being shared with you during that time frame. If you have needs during that time frame, we will communicate the opportunities in which you can let us know that information, of course, and then turn around and be able to give you the technology that you may need during this time. Now, my team, I should say the district's team, has already started to really get out the Chromebook conversations and make sure that our families have that in place already before these events possibly happen. Now, naturally, we have some littles down in the BDE that haven't gotten all their technology just yet, because this week was our week to plan out, giving out all of our technology to our students. We, of course, wanted to have all this information and, of course, wanted to have all the computers into the hands of all of our kids, but we also had a backlog from the storm that happened over the past 2 weeks. And so with that being said, some of our stuff hadn't gotten here yet, and which put us in a different window in which we can actually deliver the materials to you. So in the event, again, going back to a classroom closure, the number one place we should go back to would be a Google Classroom. In the event of a school and or district closure, where all of our parents and our teachers know to report back to, again, will be the Google Classroom. There will be a change in our schedules as it pertains to the start and end times in the event that we have a school and or district closure. We'll move back to a schedule in which we kind of worked from last year. We know that being online all day is just real tough. And we believe that the structure that we had in place last year with the virtual learning opportunity happening from 9 to 2 o'clock was a great window for us in our school district. In the event, again, that our district has a closure, our whole district will move to that start and end time, similar to what we had last year when we started school, when we were the first 3 weeks of school last year, that, like Dr. Brown mentioned, we were a 9 to a 2 o'clock time frame for our students. So parents, please understand that we know that this is a very hard thing to navigate. We are doing everything that we can to keep, I like to say, students in school, but we know that the experience has given us certain things that we have to work through as it pertains to the CDC guidelines, in which we have followed very closely over this past year and a half now. And so again, in an event that we have to close a school and or a district, we will move to a different time frame in which we will make sure that all of this information will be communicated with to you by both the school district and or the buildings. Please take note at the schedule that was shared with you as well over the weekend, and as well to the board. The schedules that Brown Deer Elementary has, and the schedules that the middle school has, and the schedule that the high school has should be something that we kind of follow. There will be a need to pivot in certain situations, but please note that if we have to do that, we will communicate those changes with all of our families as soon as we know there may need to be that change. And so with that being said, again, this information has been shared with the entire school community and of course with our board. And at this time, I would like to actually turn it over to Kara just for a brief moment, just to share where we are with our Chromebook distributions, and then I'll take it from there and turn it over to the board. Mrs. Turner.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we are working this week to get out our devices to the middle school and high school students. So Monday, we distributed the middle school devices. Today, we did the sophomore, juniors, and seniors. We had, as Mr. Garrison explained, an issue with getting our cases in. So Hurricane Irene created a bunch of problems for us. So we are expecting a shipment of cases tomorrow. And then we will have our freshmen have their Chromebooks. We know that there are students in quarantine both at the middle high school as well as the elementary school. So we sent out a Sky Alert today. I have a team of 4. I think I would need about double or triple the staff to be able to meet all the needs that we have, especially at the accelerated rate in which we find ourselves in. I think we had hoped that would be a little bit quicker, but in the reality, in terms of just our timeline, everything seems to be getting pushed back a little bit. So our goal is for all of our families, K-12, to have access to a learning device. We have those devices. It's just a matter of the rollout. We started at the high school. We're rolling down. Our families in quarantine at the middle high school will have an opportunity to pick up devices tomorrow, starting tomorrow afternoon. And then my team and I are working on looking at the data. So we asked families to register during registration. And then when we were at Picture Day, we aggregated a bunch of data. We collected it so that we would have a sense of families' access to devices as well as access to internet. We're going to be pulling that data, looking at the numbers tomorrow and gathering those lists so that we can come up with a plan. First tier is obviously the quarantine students. And then after that, it then would be families who do not have access to extra devices at home that require a district device in order for learning to take place. So again, this goal is not only to meet the needs of those students who should find themselves in quarantine or in case of a district closure, but it's also, again, an opportunity to give students and families access to technology so that they can continue their learning. So an unfinished learning that might take place. So I feel like by the end of this week, we'll have either a very good understanding in terms of the timeline. As you know, my colleague Andy Hayes works with Sharonda to kind of help with the back end systems and the dashboards. She's going to be speaking later to this, I would imagine, about the quarantine guidelines, but our dashboard is a little inaccurate. So we're going to have a better understanding tomorrow and Thursday, as well as those students who either need to stay in quarantine beyond what we believe might be Tuesday or might be Thursday. So our goal is to get those devices out as quickly as possible. So we'll be almost done at the middle high school by Thursday, and then we'll be able to direct all of our efforts and energies on getting devices out at the elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. And then, of course, we also have a conversation around food distribution. Of course, if there's a situation where there's a school and or a district closure, we will still be able to provide meals for our students. And that information was also shared with our parents and, of course, in our district update as well. And so I would like to turn it over to the board for any questions. Thank you, team.
All right, board members, any questions? Yes, Ms. Robinson.
I just wanted to ask, can you just talk us through the notification process when there is a potential quarantine or a shutdown for the students?
Sure, I can touch on it.
And Miss Farrington is on with us this evening too, so that'll be part of her discussion when we talk about quarantine guidelines. Miss Robinson, item number E, or letter E.
Okay. Any other further questions?
So this may also be for the district nurse too, in terms of the threshold, particularly when we're talking about or having to pivot to closure mode. What is the threshold that we're looking at in terms of the district and making that decision to close if we have to?
Yes, and that conversation will also be touched on in Mrs. Farrington's conversation, but I just want to note, like I said, it's never our goal to get to that point. If we have to, it'll be definitely something that our district will have to make a decision on. I will say that Dr. Brown and our whole entire staff and our entire team, when we're making that decision, Those are some long conversations. Those are some deep conversations as well. But we always try to move in what's the best interest of our school district for the safe and wellness of all our staff and students. So that will be touched on again when Sharonda, Mrs. Farrington, I should say, will present.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other further questions? I guess one question I do have is in relationship to the food. I know that we have it set to where individuals can come to the Novak Family Field House to be able to pick up the breakfasts and lunches just in case. Are we also going to have those other, I thought we, well, at least this summer, I know we had other sites where parents could come and pick up breakfasts and lunches. Are we just only doing it at the Novak Field House? Or are we going to utilize those other spaces that we did this summer as well too?
Right now, actually, we slowly close those sites as there just wasn't that participation level. I think at the end we had one family coming to pick and save, and so we kind of slowly whittled that back just as the field house. And we are continuing that schedule. We had Mondays and Thursdays, and that would continue in a closure. We'll certainly look at it at that moment. I think though part of the reality was that I think a year ago when this all first broke, people didn't really go anywhere, and we kind of all, stayed home. So I didn't want to travel very much at all. So I think that's one of the reasons why we had those remote locations around the village. If it was a need, we certainly could revisit it. But I think as of now, we've certainly seen steady participation at the field house, and it's certainly the easiest for our food service staff to prepare the food and get it out to them. But we'd certainly examine it if we saw a closure, certainly of long term, or that we felt that the families would significantly benefit from having a remote location.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Any other board members? Any other questions? All right, thank you. Excellent presentation and good job. Let's go on to item D, our athletics and activities update. Let me see, here we go. Dr. Kelsey Brown.
A little odd for me to be speaking on athletics, but.
Yeah, because I was getting ready to say Gerald, and I looked and I was like, okay, no, that's name's not there. Okay.
It is quite all right. I just wanted to include this as an agenda item tonight. First, I would like to share with the board, tonight is the night Mr. McGregor is being inducted into the Hall of Fame in the Beloit School District. And so if you get a chance to send him an email or see him, please congratulate him this evening. So that is where he is. And so I just wanted to provide, so in his absence, I wanted to just provide a brief update on athletics and activities as we continue to expand our offerings to our students from a K-12 perspective. Just wanted the board to understand that there will be many opportunities. Hopefully over time it will lessen, but right now we're noticing the level at which we have to pivot around activities for sports in particular. Case in point, on Friday, we were scheduled to have a football game here with Shoreland High School, and we had to pivot as a result of referees. There were some issues or concern with referees who would have come to us on that Friday. And so as a result, rather than not allowing our students to play, we pivoted to a Saturday, and all those individuals who were able to support a football game on Saturday that was otherwise noted to take place on Friday still took place for our students. So with that being said, we are making a concerted effort to not cancel any activities for our students, unless of course it's related to a COVID positive case and then we have close contacts. That's a different conversation. But when we're all safe and healthy, our goal is to keep our students playing and engage in the activities moving forward. The other example of pivoting as we talk about transportation was just yesterday, where we almost thought we might would have had to forfeit our volleyball game. We had a volleyball game with Riverside High School because of the transportation with the bus drivers. But notably, we were able to rev up our two vans, and I do believe a few parents drove as well. And our girls were able to play in that tournament on yesterday and took second place. So I just want everyone to understand the pivoting that's necessary in order to continue with some level of consistency as we continue to move forward with with our in-person learning, number one, but also making sure our kids are engaged in activities and athletics as we continue to promote educating the whole child. What I will also do is include athletics and activities as an agenda item for the board meeting as well, so that Mr. McGregor can also provide some additional information regarding where we are. But all of our sports, our fall sports, are in tow at this point, and that's good news. And I will not add a but, Dr. Beadle, because there is no but. We just gonna keep on moving forward with getting our kids to where they need to be when we can. Really quickly, I said to the cabinet a couple weeks ago, we might all have to take a class to get our CDLs, our CDL licenses, because we just want our kids to be able to continue to come to school and be able to continue to be involved in their extracurricular activities. So that's just a brief update. I did attend the athletic directors meeting with Mr. McGregory today at Greenfield High School, and there's some other changes that are coming down the pike that we will make you aware of upon his return at the board meeting at the end of the month. So there will be lots of pivoting going on, and just understand we do appreciate everyone's grace with the need to pivot. Sometimes it's a last minute pivot, and so we make those adjustments and move accordingly. So it may not be as perfect as we want it, but we are trying to be as efficient as possible with all of these activities that we're trying to implement for our kids as we continue to move forward. So that is the experience is on top of our regular day-to-day duties. And so if we appreciate your grace as we continue to and your grace and patience, if you will, as we continue to move forward with what we're trying to do. So it doesn't lessen the day-to-day that we normally had to do. It just kind of heightens our work, but we will remain steadfast as we continue to get through this school year with some level of consistency for our students, our parents and families. And if there are any questions I might be able to entertain, I'd be happy to do so. And if not, we can ask Mr. McGregory to respond at the end of the month board meeting.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much for that update, Dr. Kelsey Brown. And I do have my CDL, so if you need me, I'm a phone call away.
Right.
I got him. All right, let's go on to item number E, our quarantine guidelines. Nurse Farrington.
Hello, everyone. I will need to share my screen, whoever is the administrator of this. Let me know what I have to do to share my screen. Share screen. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, you
There we
sure
go.
can.
Okay, good. So many have asked about our protocols. So our protocols have not changed very much from last year. The only difference is the addition of vaccinations that does completely change our world in the middle high school for those that are 12 and up. This is not different from last year. And this says staff. This also means students. This means vaccinated or unvaccinated. So if you test positive for COVID-19, so you must isolate when you've been infected with COVID-19. So a lot of what you hear is isolation and quarantine. So isolation is used to separate people infected with COVID-19 from those that are not infected. So quarantine and isolation mean slightly different things, although you're at home. So with both an isolation and a quarantine, you're home. If you're positive, you will isolate from 10 days from the start of symptoms. If you don't have any symptoms, they call you asymptomatic, then you are isolating from the day you receive your positive test. So with vaccinations, people are having very little, very mild symptoms, and most report none at all. So with those staff and students that are positive, they return to work on day 11. So when you think about being inside of an isolation, you're inside of isolation from basically day 0 to day 10. On day 11, if you are fever-free without the use of medication for 24 hours and you have improved symptoms, then you are free to return to work, return to class. This is the same guidance that you've been hearing, but I hope this is a little bit better to understand, a little bit easier for you. Now, what has changed for us is vaccinations. So we're speaking of ages 12 and up. If you're under 12, you shouldn't be vaccinated. So if you are fully vaccinated, right, and you've been a close contact, that means you have been within, now this is for adults because adults use 6 feet, children in school use 3 feet. So for us adults, if you have been within 6 feet of someone for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period, you are considered a close contact. Again, this close contact could be 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at lunch, and 5 minutes at bus duty. If those minutes equal 15 or more, then you will be considered a close contact. Here is the difference. If you are fully vaccinated, that means that you are 2 weeks from your final dose. Some people took the single dose. That means 2 weeks after your single dose or 2 weeks after your final dose. This information for fully vaxxed is the same for students. Although most students that are 16 and under, they're all taking Pfizer because that was the only one approved for them. So if you're fully vaccinated and you have no symptoms, you do not need to quarantine. So our students that were fully vaxxed, they were able to return to school the next day. Here's the difference. Testing is still required. However, you don't need to miss school. You don't need to miss work. Your only requirement is to get a test in 3 to 5 days, and you have to wear your mask at all times until negative test results. So that means when you don't get to eat lunch with your friends, and take off your mask, you eat in your car, eat at the curb, eat wherever you can keep your mask on. But in district, you should have a mask on 100% of the time. And this is the big difference. And some people want to know, how else are you a close contact? Okay. Now, some of these things we don't see, you kind of have to tell us, in talking and contact tracing. Sometimes I'll hear about these small situations. You drank from a friend's water bottle without thinking. The following day, the friend developed symptoms and tested positive for COVID-19. You are a close contact. You're visiting a parent and gave them a hug goodbye. 2 days later, the parent tested positive for COVID-19 after developing symptoms. You are a close contact. I just went over this exact situation with one of my parents and had to explain, yes, they are a close contact. Absolutely. So these are a few situations that people miss when they're considering close contacts, but these are all important close contacts. Now, I know when we spoke before, there was some confusion on how we calculate, okay? So all of the quarantine that we're speaking of is unvaccinated right now, because we know that if you're vaccinated and asymptomatic, you don't need to quarantine. So now we're talking all of our unvaccinated staff, students, the entire elementary school body. We may have one 12-year-old over there, I'm not sure. So here is the breakdown. And I actually would like to do this one. Well, I'll show you this one. Okay, so your first day of contact. So first we're going to decide if the person is a household contact or not. For this particular example here, we're going to say that the person is not a household contact, okay? Day 0 is your day of contact. So on Sunday, you were a close contact, okay? But you don't live with the person. They don't live with you. So you come in contact with them, and now you say, oh, Nurse Farrington, I drank out of my grandma's bottle and now she's positive, I'm a close contact. Okay, this is how we count it. Day 0 is your day of contact. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. Day 6 is the first day that you may take a COVID-19 test and it will be accurate. And why? Because it takes 3 to 5 days for your body to develop enough antibodies to test positive. So this is the reason you can't test out of a quarantine. If you test it on today and your body doesn't have enough of the virus in it, then you'll test negative. But then maybe on day 5, now you have the stuffy nose, now you have the mysterious headache. You would have missed this and you would be probably positive by Saturday, but we would miss it. And this is why I tell parents, do not test before day 6. If you test before day 6, this result I cannot use. It will be invalid and you will need to take your kid back to testing day 6 or after. So you test on day 6. Not many people are doing rapid tests. So say it takes a couple days to get your results. You can return on day 8 because quarantine is 7 days. So you're inside of quarantine. Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On day 8, with a negative test, you may return to school or work. Some families say, well, I don't want to test. It's invasive. I don't want to do it. And that is absolutely fine. I'm okay with whatever choice parents make. If you choose not to test, then you will continue on day 8, 9, and 10 at home. On day 11, you may return to school or campus. And you say, well, why, Sharonda? Because basically what you're doing is you're kind of going into an isolation period. What the CDC says is from the first day of symptoms, you cannot pass that virus past 10 days. So that's why some of the time, the person who was positive comes back before the person who was a close contact. Now, let me show you an example of that. Okay, I actually did this so that you can see it in real time. Okay, so I use this week as an example because it will be very easy for you to see. Okay, now this is if we were a close contact. Okay, so say Dr. Kelsey Brown and I, we are sisters and we live together. Nurse Farrington tested positive. So on the first day of symptoms, we're going to call me day 0. On Monday, I had a sore throat and a headache. I found out that I could find out later in the week, it doesn't matter. So even if I found out on Saturday, I'm going back to the first day of symptoms. Why? Because you're only going to pass the virus for 10 days from the first day of symptoms. So Sharonda is in quarantine from day 0, 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, I'm in isolation. I'm in isolation for 10 days. My 10th day of isolation now, Dr. Brown is home with me. So technically she's home. So she's home. So you see her 10 days. This is my 10 days. This is her. So technically she's now on her day 0 of quarantine, but she's home for 10 days. I'm going back to school because I am no longer passing that virus. I am fever-free and have been since Thursday, and my symptoms have improved. And I say, Dr. Brown, I'm sorry, I have to leave you. I'm going back to school. She now gets to stay home for 7 days. Now here is her day 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is Dr. Brown's first day to test. Day 6 in quarantine, but a total of 16 days because she was home the entire time I was home. So she can't test to come back until day 6. So Day 7, her last day in quarantine. Okay, day 8, she's able to return to school with a negative test. Okay, so let's go back. Mommy says, Dr. Brown, you cannot take a COVID-19 test. You're going to have to ride this out. I don't think COVID-19 tests are real. So I'll say, that's okay. You don't have to produce a COVID-19 test. You need to stay home for 10 days. So for her, it will be her 10 days and my 10 days. So she goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. On Monday, she returns to school. No proof of test is required at that point. So people say, well, gosh, some of these quarantine children stay out for a long time, and they do. And what I see from being a contact tracer is, I would say, if I just had to throw a number out there, I would say 60 or 70% of close contacts eventually turn positive. This is what I see. So you have the kid home because of mom, and then we'll get a call somewhere in here. Oh yeah, you know, our little kid now is positive. And I say, yeah, I know, that's probably right. We'll see her back at school on Monday the 4th. So same calculations. So by the time they come back, they've done an entire isolation period for themselves and an entire isolation period for their parents. So the other thing that I wanted to show you is an example of a letter that parents get. It's full of words. A lot of parents have a difficult time getting through all of these words, but it's important that we put them in. So they receive a letter that says, "Dear parent, your child has been identified as a close contact of a person in the classroom who tested positive." It gives them a return date. It gives them the first date that you can test, which is here. We talk about our on-site testing with Health Connections. If they want to test, they usually have been sending an email to the district nurse. If they want to test, they also will have to sign a consent form. So you press on the consent form and it shows you that Brown Deer, along with Health Connections and the COVID division, is offering testing. What is it? How will I find my results? So we have here, we're doing both a rapid test and a PCR. So the rapid test, we find out results within 15 minutes. That means that they let me know, hey, Sharonda, you have something going on, talk to these parents. And then they are followed up by test results by email. So everything that I send my students to do, I also do for myself. 2 Fridays ago, I said, all right, ladies, you have to test me. I went in, I was tested. I had a quick result within 15 minutes. And when I woke up, I want to say it was 48 hours later, I did have my results in my email that had same information for me. So the parents are getting this information in their email. And it tells them kind of what you should do. And our parents have been really good with calling to the school about their kids being ill or someone testing positive. Our Brown Deer parents are amazing. So with this, they fill out the student's information, the race, the parent, and this information is here because in the WED system, the Wisconsin system that they input the results in, this is important information that they need for their documentation on the Wisconsin side. And then the parents have the opportunity to sign this and submit. When they submit this, I get a copy in my email that our student has consented, and Health Connections also get a copy. So this letter continues on, more information, and has the number to the health department because we work closely with them as well. And then I wanted to show you one other thing. You had asked a question, if I could move this. You had asked a question about when we close. So like Mr. Garrison said, when we decide to close a district, it is a huge decision and it's based on more than just a percentage normally. And so now with the addition of the vaccine, my hope is that we never have to close the middle high school at all, because the more, as we go, I'm seeing more and more children being vaccinated. And so this is from the North Shore website. And as you can see, it kind of tells community transmission level by school district boundary. And if you look at ours, we're the only one in here with substantial transmission. So looks like everyone around is high and we are substantial. And so if you go down a little bit more, it talks about our residents who received their first dose. So we are lower on this at 64.88. And so, you know, I have conversations with students and parents all the time about, you know, the importance of vaccination. And so hopefully we'll continue to have these conversations, because the higher this number is, hopefully, the less often we'll have to quarantine students. So hopefully some of our 12 and over students are in this group. And so Hearsay says that 12 and under 12 vaccinations should be coming about late October, November. Now that is hearsay, the news. I don't have any, you know, inside information, but hopefully it is coming. And so that will change the game for us at the Brown Deer School District, because parents will have a choice for vaccination or not. So if students are out quarantined, you know, could be medical, religion, it still will be the choice that the parents will have. So I know I have provided a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions?
Let me just chime in for a moment. Ms. Farrington, thank you for your presentation. Just wanted to share with the board, we continue to, as it relates to going back to an entire virtual experience, as Mr. Garrison and Ms. Farrington stated, our ultimate goal is to not have to do that. But we are also mindful of the possibilities with the change in the variant, that the potential is there for that to have to occur. So if you recall from last year, one of our thresholds was understanding we were looking at a 10% staff absence rate in each one of our buildings to determine if indeed there will be a need for us to return to virtual. Given that we do have staff who are vaccinated, we haven't seen that just yet. But that's one of the measures, Ms. Ashley, that we would use to, if we are unable to fully staff or have staff members in front of our students to continue the instruction that is necessary, then that would cause us to press pause and then return to an entire virtual experience. Now that could be by building, but it could also be district-wide. If that indeed is what has to happen. So that is our threshold, as it was mentioned from last year as well. So we look at staff absences and we look at staff absences daily and ensure that we can have staff in front of our students as we continue to move forward.
All right, questions? Any board members, any questions? Go ahead, Lisa.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Farrington. I believe you had said the 6 days is the first time you can be tested after close contact. Is that the same number of days if you have experienced symptoms?
So,
And say you didn't know if you had close contact, say you just start experiencing symptoms.
So, and that I didn't want to address two things. So with that, if you are symptomatic here at school or at home, the expectation is you either go and get a negative test or you stay home for 10 days. So either way, we need to know that you're not passing that virus. So we have many kids that come in through the health office and, you know, they say, hey, you know, I'm stuffy and I have a headache. And we'll call the parent, we'll say, hey, I have to send, you know, little student home. He's got 2 symptoms, and with 2 symptoms, we need proof of a negative test, or he has to stay out for 10 days. And so that is what we're doing. And most of our parents, I would say so far, 90% of them, even higher, they will have their student tested to return. And I don't allow them to return with symptoms. They have to have improved symptoms and a negative test. And then I did not mention anything about having COVID in the last 90 days. If you were COVID positive in the past 90 days, you are treated as a vaccinated person. So you follow the vaccinated guidelines.
Anyone else have any questions? Ms. Peterson?
Yes, Ms. Farrington, I just wanted to touch back with Lisa's question, just for a little clarity. So if I don't have close contact, again, as Lisa stated, and the test doesn't show up positive for after 6 days, but I'm experiencing symptoms, wouldn't my test then show, because you indicated that if I'm experiencing at least 2 of the symptoms, you should go get tested. But if it's not before the 6 days and I get tested, it will show negative if I'm understanding correctly. But if I show you a negative test, then you're saying that I'm able to come back to school, but I still have the symptoms, and thus I'm still able to pass the virus.
Okay, so
Am I not understanding what you're saying?
So this is how many ways you can break down COVID-19. If you are a close contact, okay, so let's go back to my scenario with Dr. Brown and I being siblings. She's positive, I'm quarantining. If at any point during my quarantine that I begin to have symptoms, I am now a probable and I get treated like a positive, and I now move to positive status, which means that I need to now start a 10-day isolation period from the first date of symptoms. So if you are, so it's basically that place where I live with the virus and now I'm symptomatic. Even if my test shows negative, well, I'm living with the virus. So it's probably the virus that I have as opposed to an ear infection or something else. So if you are a close contact that goes on to have symptoms, you are now a probable case. In that manner, I treat you as a positive case. Even if your test shows negative, you will stay out for the entire duration of 10 days from the start of symptoms. So that's the one piece. If you're a close contact that goes on to be symptomatic. If you are not a close contact and you say, come to the health office, and I say, hey, is anyone in your family positive for COVID? Are any of your friends positive for COVID? Do you know anyone in America right now positive for COVID that you've been around? And they say, no, I woke up with a headache and a sore throat. That kid will get 10 days and a negative test. If that child in 5 days produces, or a day or 2 or 3 produces a negative test, and they are improved symptoms, they can return.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Nurse Farrington, I have a question for you in terms of the proof of test. And so when you have a student who has been quarantined and they're coming off quarantine and they're ready to come to school, right? Do they have to show proof of a negative test? And yeah, are you asking students to screenshot it? Are they bringing, an email from Health Connections indicating that they tested negative? How,
So if
what's
they
the entry? What's the golden ticket to get back
Okay.
in?
So if you tested with Health Connections, be it at home, be it at school, be it on campus, be it outside, if you don't have to show proof because Health Connections will contact me directly. So they may not tell the parent or the student that they're negative or positive because the volume is high. But if there's any issues, Health Connections will come to me directly. If you choose not to use our site vendor, then yes, you need to provide proof of a negative test. That could be via an email, that can be via a screenshot, that could be via a piece of paper from the testing site. I have the ability to go into the WED system and verify everything. I can go into the Wisconsin immunization and verify immunizations. So everything is verifiable. I do not take home tests as proof of testing, period.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Nurse Farrington, for your presentation.
Dr. Beadle, may I just say a great big thank you to Sharonda and team. I just want to, again, share with everyone, this process is all consuming and all encompassing and can literally take up her whole day with contact tracing, taking phone calls from parents, working with her staff in the health rooms. And so we will continue to examine this process and understand if there's a need to add any additional resources to this process until ultimately what I have shared with our team here is, as I see how this process has evolved over time, our answers are people getting vaccinated, which we highly recommend, and testing often and frequently. But I think that's where we are in this process in order to ensure that we can keep everyone safe and healthy and keep our students in school, of course, with the exception of the younger ones who do not have access to a vaccine just yet. But I felt the need to put that out there because what it looks like day to day in doing this work is almost unfathomable and unbelievable to some extent that we're still in this process at this time, as we thought we will be on a downshift with this experience. So I felt the need to share that with everyone. It is, sometimes we go until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night with these conversations to make sure we have accurate information and we're making sound decisions. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Kelsey Brown. Let's go on to item number 4, engaged and innovative staff, approval of new hires. Mr. Clemming.
Good evening again. Fortunately, our hiring is slowing down as the school year started. We have just one new hire. It's Gregory Bond as a special education teacher at the middle high school.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the hiring of Gregory Bond?
Dr. Vito, I'd like to make a motion to approve the hiring of Gregory Bond as a high school special education teacher for the 2021-2022 school year.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second Dr. Beadle.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Ashley. Motion moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor with raised hand and or aye. And 7. All right, motion carries unanimously 7-0. All right, we'll welcome Mr. Gregory Bond as our high school special education teacher. All right, let's go on to item B, approval of resignations. Mr. Clemming.
And unfortunately, we did have one as well. Nicole Anderson, a special education teacher at the high school, submitted her resignation. Her last day will be September 24th. We did receive liquidated damages today, so I am bringing her name to the board for approval tonight.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the resignation of Nicole Anderson?
Dr. Beadle, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resignation of Nicole Anderson as a high school special education teacher effective September 24th, 2021.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. The motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Dr. Beadle, I'll second.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor with raised hand and or aye. All right, motion carries unanimously 7-0. We wish Ms. Anderson much success in her new career. And as we always say, once a Falcon, always a Falcon. All right, let's go on to our next item. Item number 5, engage board and community to lead. Our budget hearing and annual meeting will be September 23rd, 2021. It will be held in the middle school South Commons area at 6 p.m. So all residents must be present in order to vote. Again, you must be present in order to vote. You cannot do this virtually, all right? So everyone, all community members, for this annual budget hearing and the annual meeting on September 23rd, at 6 p.m. in the middle school South Commons, you must be present in order to vote. All right. Any questions in relationship to that? Dr. Kelsey Brown and Mr. Klimick, do we have whom is going to run the meeting for us?
Yes, we are working on two community members who have said yes to help us facilitate the process.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, because this is one that the school board does not run this meeting. This meeting is actually ran by community members because it is our budget hearing and annual meeting. And we vote just like all citizens of the village of Brown Deer, and we vote in person. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right, let's go on to item number 6. Would someone like to make a motion to move into closed session?
Dr. Beadle, this is Lisa. I'll make a motion to move into closed session to discuss personnel matters pursuant to state statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Zielinski. A motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I will second Dr. Beadle.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. All right, motion has been made and seconded. Do we need to do roll call vote? All right, our wonderful clerk.
Beto.
Aye.
Daniels Ashley.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Robinson, aye. Smith.
Aye.
Zick.
Aye.
And Zielinski.
Aye.
All right, it goes 7-0. Thank you very much. And now we will go into closed session at, I'm sorry, Ms. Zielinski.
Sorry, I think we're doing it where we're just only in person participating in the closed session, correct?
Yeah. Hold on 1 second, please. Can we get a Google Meet thing out real quick? I can give you all the passwords. I can give you all the passwords. Okay. All right, we're ready to go into closed session. Nicole?
Yes, sir.
All right, we will be sending you something shortly.
Got it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending our board meeting this evening. As always, remember to stay safe. God bless. Thank you for spending time with us, and enjoy the remainder of your evening and have a wonderful remainder of your week. Thank you.